Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about films we think might be underrated, underseen, or sometimes, well, we just wanted to talk about them. This week, it was Alice's turn to pick, and it's Long Time Dead. So, let's see what we think. So, thank you for joining us once again. It's me, I'm hosting this week. It's Josh, and I'm joined by Alice. How you doing, Alice?
I'm all right. There was a bit of a question mark at the end of my name there. Josh was just like,
Alice?
Alice?
Is it Alice?
Is it?
I want to
Who the
say
fuck
Alice.
is Alice? Wait,
Hey.
how did we get
We
this far in before making that joke? Only 2 years later,
It's always 2 years. Anyway, this week's film is Long Time Dead. Before we get stuck into that, I just want to let you know that we are now on Patreon, if you didn't already know. Check us out. There's loads of bonus content on there, episodes early, extended episodes, few other bits and bobs. Get involved, get on there. It's patreon.com/justfilms and that. Whatever you can give will be massively appreciated, but thank you as ever for listening. The link to that is in the episode notes. Anyway, Alice, Long Time Dead.
Oh yeah, hell of a long time.
It's from 2001, isn't it?
It is.
There's going to be spoilers, isn't there?
There sure is.
So
you know this format by now, Josh. You picked it up. Very good.
Some could say between us we designed it. I mean, you know. Anyway, so you picked this one. So what is it about and why did you pick it? Is it underrated? Is it underseen? Why did you pick this one, Alice?
So, Long Time Dead is a horror film. It is a British horror film, and it is about a group of young'uns from London who basically do a Ouija board. It unleashes a fire demon called the Djinn, and then it starts killing them off one by one. So you're pretty standard horror narrative there where all the main characters die. So that's what the film is about in a nutshell. The reason I picked it, so this is a film I think I've only seen once before, right? So we rented it on, I think it might have been DVD by then, so not quite the video. So we rented it on DVD one Halloween. We got that and The Hole, which I think has Keira Knightley in it. It was her first film, so we rented that and it absolutely shat me up, Josh. I was shitting myself. So got to preface this whole thing by saying that horror is probably my least explored genre because I am an unbelievably massive wimp when it comes to horror films. I get scared.
There's something behind you there.
Don't do it! Don't do it! I can't take it.
That's something moved then.
Stop it! Hopefully it's just Hella. So I get scared really easily. I'm really jumpy, not just when watching films, but just in life anyway. Ollie is always trying to trick me and scare me, and he's always very successful when doing it. I know it's a film. I know it's not real. I studied film. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I get dead scared, right? Long time dead scared. So I don't tend to watch many horror. So I saw this. Obviously, it shut me up. Didn't watch it again because it was way too scary. Started thinking about it recently because I think I read an article about Joe Absalom. Absalom, who plays
one of the actors,
he's one of the main characters. I read an article about him and it just sort of sparked something in me. I was like, oh my God, Long Time Dead. I need to see what rating that got. Maybe it'd be good for the podcast. And after exploring that, I reckon it's underrated. And then, Josh, because of how unbelievably difficult it was to find to watch for this episode, I would also say that it is underseen because I can't imagine that anybody is watching it. Anybody.
This was one of the most difficult films that we've had to find.
Yeah, possibly the most difficult.
Because I think if you weigh up, for me, what makes this so difficult is the lack of logic as why is it hard to find, because this film, right, is from Working Title, which is, if you don't know, is one of the biggest, if not the biggest production companies in the UK based production company, right? So I get Solomon Gaynor, I do get that a little bit because
real niche, that, isn't it?
Yeah, real niche, Welsh language
cinema
film. Wicker Park, we could get hold of, the copy wasn't great. And then this, I was like, why is this so hard to get hold of? But like you say, it was. So purely for that reason, perhaps it's underseen. And you reckon the ratings as well underrated?
I reckon it is, yeah. And I wasn't sure, going back into it, watching it again, I was like, oh, is this going to be underrated? But having watched it again now, I stand by it. And yeah, I reckon Long Time Dead is underrated. So, Josh, had you seen this one before?
So I, going into it, I thought I'd never seen it. I mean, the title's
Okay.
pretty generic, isn't it? So that could be like a detective story. It could be a horror. It could be anything really. It
Yeah.
could be a romantic comedy where everyone's a ghost. Anyway,
Who
so
knows?
the title's quite generic. So yeah, it was hard to find, but no, I hadn't seen it before. I definitely hadn't seen it before. But when I did eventually find it and saw the poster, I recognised the poster. So I don't know if that's like somewhere in the deep recesses of my mind, where back in the day when you used to go and, like you say, and rent a DVD and you flick through all the titles, I've seen it, but I've definitely seen that
Oh, yeah,
poster with
maybe.
the eyes before. But other than that, no, I hadn't seen it, didn't know anything about it, but I'd definitely seen that poster before. So no,
Okay.
hadn't seen it. Was interested to know why you picked it, and because it was such an obscure choice, really, I suppose, when you think about it. Like we've already touched on it, is from a big production company, but it's got no massive names in it or anything like that. So let's see what we think then. So, having rewatched it, what did you think?
So, in general, I don't think it's a masterpiece, and some of the story and character development left me a bit wanting, but I do think that there were some really great things about it, and after watching it again, I do still think that it's underrated. So I'll touch on some of the things that I did like. So I think it looks and sounds pretty good, right? So I really liked some of the camera work and shot selection. So there's quite a few POV shots from the perspective of the djinn, so of this demon that they've unleashed, where the camera is like racing down corridors or charging down the stairs. And I did find this quite impactful and dramatic and thought that it helped to build the tension. And then we've also got some moments that have been captured on video. So like the gang, the characters carry around a little video recorder with them.
Of course they do.
So
It's a
it's
horror
sort
film.
of absolutely, right? So it was quite nice to see those shots and that footage, and that just kind of added another layer to the viewing experience. And I thought the whole thing sounded pretty good as well. So you've got some like really intense, typical horror style music, and that did a good job of putting me on edge. But the real star of the show for me was the diegetic sounds. So things like glass scraping across a table, doors opening and closing, things falling and people banging into things. A lot of these were really sharp and really cut right through you and would often occur amid sort of complete silence. So it made me really jumpy. And I think the film succeeded in making me feel tense. And I think the best example of all that was definitely when they're doing the Ouija board, right? So I think it helps that the tension is also focused in the frame on one place, right? Because everyone's looking at the same thing. The audience are looking at the same thing. The characters are looking at the same thing. They're all looking at this Ouija board, right? So there's like this really sort of condensed like air of sort of tension and sort of fear going through everyone. And then the glass that the spirit or demon is meant to use to communicate, if they do sort of successfully communicate with anything, starts moving really quickly and abruptly. And I think one of the characters asks, "Can you tell the future?" And it just sort of shoots immediately over to yes and makes such a horrible sound. And then the characters in the audience, I think, have that real, oh my God moment. I was really scared. Like when it goes, ugh, like it just sort of slides over and it goes, yes. And then, yeah.
That
was a bit
scene, I
nervous.
think, is probably definitely a highlight. The
Yeah.
Ouija board scene. It's a really well done scene. I mean, we've all seen, whatever you believe, we've all seen plenty of, or most of us, if you like films, have seen Ouija board scenes done many
Yeah.
times in films in loads of different eras and genres, and etc. Mainly horror, obviously. But I thought it was well done. Like you say, I thought it was really well done. Anyway, sorry, as you were saying, what else did you like?
So I do quite like that you don't see the djinn, so it doesn't seem to have a physical form in this world and instead possesses people in order to kill its victims. And then the not seeing in this instance does have quite an impact. So you would only ever see like the results of its attacks. So either dead bodies or burnt flesh or lots of blood, and then sometimes objects would be hot to the touch if they were nearby. Moving on to some of the performances. So I thought Alec Newman, who plays Liam, gave a pretty good performance. And it turns out that Liam is sort of a bit more important to the narrative than the other characters because his parents had already done a Ouija board in Morocco and had conjured the same demon. So there was, and he was there as well, wasn't he? He was in the room with his parents when it happened, but I guess
There's a
he
little
sort
boy,
of,
yeah.
yeah, like
Obviously,
he
of course
sort
he
of
was.
blocked
What
it
else
all
are you
out.
gonna do on a family holiday?
I know, right? It's weird, isn't it? I want a bit more backstory about what the fuck they were doing, right? But maybe we'll get onto that a bit later. So he's sort of quite important and he has a little bit more to do. And then Joe Absalom, who plays Rob, apologies if I'm not saying that right. Joe Absalom. I think that's right, isn't it?
He was Matthew.
He was Matthew in EastEnders. You know Matthew from EastEnders.
Of course I do, yeah.
So he plays Rob in this, and I thought he had some strong moments as well. So he had a little bit more to do because he is the person that the djinn has possessed. So he's kind of doing this sort of dual acting where he is acting as the djinn who is acting as Rob. And he has some really good moments, I think, especially towards the end. For the most part, that is pretty much everything that I liked about it. But we'll come to you now because I'm interested. I haven't got high hopes, but I'm interested.
So what do you think I think? Do you think I think it's rubbish?
I reckon you thought it was pretty lame, but that you were able to pick like a couple of things that were sort of technically good, shall we say.
Okay.
That's where I'm at with that with you.
No, well, so overall, I thought it was okay.
Okay,
there's definitely some good, there's definitely some bad, and there's definitely a decent film in there. I think the problem for me is I think it starts quite poorly and then it's got a bit of an uphill battle to win you back. This is my opinion. And then it hits its stride about halfway through and then it is quite decent from there. That's sort of what I got from it. So what did I like about it? Right. So let's touch on the performances like you already done. I think there's a real mix of performances in there. There are some good and there are some bad. I mean, it borders literally from the decent performance to the GCSE drama performance.
Yes, I would agree with that.
In places. As you've already touched on, I thought Alec Newman was pretty good as Liam. He is, if there is a main character, it's him. I suppose he's the protagonist. He's the guy, isn't he? All the way through it. I also want to give a little shout out to Marsha Thomason, who was very good as Lucy. So there isn't a great female presence in this film, but she has got the most to do, and I think she's probably the best of those, which I'll come on to, fairly poorly written characters. But she's pretty good with what she's given to do. I thought there was some pretty good scared acting in there. Now, scared acting is really difficult to do, and I thought what was really good about this, and this sort of leads me on to my second point, which I'll make in a minute, is that the scared acting in this what they seemed to be going for was as real as can be scared, not sexy scared, right? So
definitely not sexy scared. I hadn't thought about that. That's a great point.
That's what I quite liked about it, was that when they were losing their heads, they're proper losing their heads. It's like whereas there are other films where it's like I'm scared, but God, I'm so handsome.
I'm so horny. Let's tuck up in this bed together and be scared naked.
I'm scared, but let's split up and we'll end up in the shower. Like, it's one of them. Isn't it? So that's
I'm
what
scared.
I liked.
Quick, let's fuck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We've all been there, Alice. Especially when gin is involved. You having that one? Anyway, and that leads me on to my next point, which is I really like the overall camera use, the look, and the feel of the film. So you've already touched on it a little bit, which is there's some decent genre tropes in there of the horror genre, and it doesn't feel too tired, which when you actually look at what they do in terms of the plot points, the actions of the characters, it doesn't do anything new, really. It doesn't do anything different, but what I do think it does is have a really interesting look and feel. So what they don't have, and again this is why it leads on from the sexy scared, real scared thing, is what they don't have is a bunch of 26-year-olds who have the muscle mass of 26-year-olds who go to the gym twice a day, who are playing teenagers. The people in it are sort of a nondescript age. It sort of hints that they might be students. It sort of hints like they're just young adults. So it never says, I don't think it says, oh, they're all at uni, because two of them or a few of them are living on a boat. So
that was a bit odd, the living on the boat thing. But I think that I think they're sort of meant to be in college, and there is a bit of a scene where one of them, is it Stella, just before her death, where they're in like a college setting, right? Because they're in like a canteen, and then she goes to like this sort of shared bathroom area. That I think, but like you said, it is definitely not clear. It is never mentioned how old they are, but also they are in a nightclub. Yeah, they do get into a nightclub, and obviously in this country,
early 20s.
Early 20s, do you think? So maybe they're using college to me university,
or
maybe?
they are students, but they're just a bit older. I don't know, but it's not like, so it's not
doesn't
like where you
say.
watch some older ones like Scream or other ones like, or even non-horror films like the first Spider-Man where they're all in high school and they've all got 5 o'clock shadow. And you're all like, they're just not. It's just, so I quite like that. And then that leads on to the next point, which is everything in this film, or a lot of elements of this film, feel dirty and scummy and grimy and run down.
British, London.
This film is not sleek, and I like that because that made it feel to me a little bit fresher. Ironically enough, it wasn't like, so I've mentioned this before, and it won't be the last time I say it, but horror is my least sort of enjoyed genre, and it's not because
same. Look at us, birds of a feather.
And it's not particularly because I get scared easily.
Not because you're scared. Yeah, no, not like me.
Listen, I was toxic masculinity. I'm hard. Do you know what I mean?
I'm fucking rock
I find
solid.
them. I like the classics. We've been to a screening of The Shining together. We've watched other decent horror films. I like decent horror films, but I just find there's too much crap and there's too much repetitiveness, and if anything, I find them a bit formulaic. And this is formulaic, but it's also not in the execution and the way it looks. Like I say, it's not doing anything new with the plot. So I really like that bleakness to it. You know, they live in a house, but it's a shithole. They go to a party or a rave, and it's not clear, is it a rave in a club? Or is it a rave in an abandoned warehouse? Or it's sort of, it's a bit of, it could just look like it's been done up so that people can do what they want in it. But that's what I quite liked about it. There was a nondescript scruffiness to the film, which really, I know probably sounds a silly thing to say, but added to that British feel. It almost felt like a train spot in horror film.
Yeah, I totally get that as well. And because for me as well, and I don't know if you felt this, but I'd like to think it's not just because he's Scottish, but Liam did remind me a little bit of Ewan McGregor. I think he looks a bit like him as well, though. He looks a bit like a young Ewan McGregor, and he's got that same sort of spiky hair.
He's very likeable as well. He's like got a similar sort of charisma or energy as well to him, I think. But it reminded me of like Train Spotting horror film, or like a horror film, but it's set in Guy Ritchie's head.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like early Guy Ritchie. So there was plenty to like in there. There are flaws in it, but it started, and I'll come on to why this is in the dislikes, and I was like, oh fucking hell. There was a few bits at the beginning, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to, this is gonna be a slog. And then about half an hour, 40 minutes in, I was like, I found myself enjoying it.
Oh, that's really good. I'm really happy.
And I think, and I was trying to think why that was, and I think that is what it is that it had that real dirtiness to it. That was, it was, because this is sort of pre 28 Days Later, so and I have to wonder, because it's pre 28 Days Later, and 28 Days Later did do massive things for the horror genre, particularly British horror. I have to wonder if this film actually would have done better, based on the fact that you've said it's underrated. I wonder if it would have done better if it had come out after.
Oh, interesting. Like if the appetite had been tantalised already, and people were in the mood for that sort of dark, sort of dingy British horror. That's an interesting point, yeah.
But yeah, there are some flaws to it, but overall, I thought it was all right.
Well, that is really great news, and I'm really pleased. And that's really interesting that it sort of lost you immediately as soon as it started, and then you grew to love it. It's a grower, not a shower. There we go.
Okay then, so we'll move on then to anything we didn't like about Long Time Dead, or anything that we'd change about Long Time Dead. Alice, is there anything you'd change about what you didn't like about Long Time Dead?
I wish it was less scary. No, anyway. Right, so my first point, my main point, it is a very broad point to start with, but I think you'll understand what I'm trying to get at. But basically, not enough happens. And I think there's a lot of story and character development really missing here. So once the djinn has entered this world, the main characters all start getting killed off one by one. And then that's pretty much it, which I know is generally the premise of films like this anyway, but there just wasn't enough going on in between. So there were so many long silences where characters think they can hear something or someone, and they get spooked out and then they're sort of trying to listen harder for things, and then it's all completely silent, and then they either discover that it's just one of their friends, ha ha ha, oh good, there's nothing to fear, or they get killed. But it just felt like these silences and the empty space in between each death was a little bit too long. Like there was just so much not happening. It was just people trying to listen for things. So I just wanted more stuff to go on. So they sort of seem to try and do a little bit with Liam and the fact that his dad and then also their landlord had already encountered the Jinn previously. But I don't think this was fleshed out enough, and it didn't go deep enough to give it any real gravitas. Like, because in the scene in Morocco, it all feels like that they're all there for a reason. Like, it's not in this film, in Long Time Dead,
It's like
in
a
this
ritual,
reality.
isn't it?
It looks like it, doesn't it? Because for these guys in the present day in the film, it's just, oh, we're pissed and high. Let's do a Ouija board. That'll be crazy. Whereas what's gone on in Morocco with Liam's parents seems way more planned, way darker. It's like
Yeah.
they've gone to Morocco to do this thing, and you never, I don't think anyway, unless you could correct me, you never find out why.
No.
Like, why have they done this?
I thought it was heading towards, the Ouija board in the present day didn't do anything, and that actually Liam had been possessed by the Jinn all that time.
Oh.
Which would have made more sense, right?
That would have been so much
Yeah.
better.
But then it just didn't.
No.
So-
and it didn't, the two didn't really, they didn't relate. Like, the two instances didn't relate, except that they happened to conjure the same demon.
Yeah.
But that didn't mean anything
And
in the end.
That's my main complaint. Sorry to sort of come into your section.
No,
there,
do it.
But it's that the rules of the world are not clear enough. What you
Okay,
need,
yeah.
what you need for a good horror. If you look at the best horror, the rules of the world have to be so clear. You know when you're watching a Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, or Freddy Krueger film, you know they're not dead. You know, all that sort of stuff. And in this, so if in this world a Ouija board can conjure back a demon, what are the chances it'd be the same one? And why? Which is why I thought this is heading towards it's been him the whole time.
Yeah, or it's got to be, and I suppose, because when it's happening, because you get, Liam sort of has these flashes, doesn't he, where these flashes of Morocco,
Yeah.
and then the glass gets really hot and it's too hot for him to handle. So then he throws it on the floor, doesn't he, and smashes it. So I wonder if maybe that's a bit of the connection there, with the demon can sense that a Ouija board is happening and that Liam just so happens to be there and he was present when he was conjured the last time. But it just felt like they were building towards something, or they were going to explore something deeper and maybe about the occult or about magic or demons or something. And it just never went as far as it should have done.
Yeah, no,
I don't think.
that's exactly. I've got a very similar point, which is the same thing, which is the world. As I've already said, the rules of the world aren't clear, and then that doesn't explain certain actions. So there's a big exposition gap where you're left going, "What?" So the rules of the world aren't clear. So then the Jinn comes out. They seem to sort of skirt over the issue that she says, "Oh, it's spelt Jinn on the Ouija board." She looks that up and goes, "A Jinn is a fire demon which possesses people," and no one goes, "Oh, hang on, that means one of us is possessed then. So one of us, we all need to be careful of each other." So it shouldn't really be a surprise at the end that it is one of them. Because if the Jinn has come around to possess one of them, if that's how the Jinn takes form, then it must have possessed one of them. So surely, we all need to go into separate rooms and fuck off then. Like, it's not... So when he comes in at the end, it shouldn't be a surprise. It should be, oh, of course he possessed one of us, because the thing said it possesses one of us. So that's not clear. And then other stuff as well, and I'll come back to the script, but like, it's a fire demon, and he kills it with fire. So how?
Yeah,
so
so-
why? How would you? So at the end, he's possessed his friend, and he sets it on fire. So why would that kill it? Why would just killing the human?
It doesn't kill it, does it?
No, but
because
it
survives. But I wonder if if you destroy the human host, then it maybe that
But maybe
does something to it.
In that case, though, where's the jeopardy?
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
In that case, if it was like, we'll get the army in. Oh, basically, if it takes human form, then it's all you got to do is kill it. Well, you go right. Well, it's taking that form. Lock that form up. That's it.
Yeah, or just
Jeopardy
shoot you.
over.
I'll shoot you in the
Or
head.
shoot it in
with
the
a
head.
gun.
Yeah. So it sort of takes the jeopardy out of it a little bit for me. So I think this is what I mean when I said earlier, is there's definitely a good film in there if they just
there's
give it
hints
a
of
bit
it.
more thought to what the rules of the world are. But anyway, sorry. Anything else? Anything else you didn't like, or is that about it?
So the other main thing was, and you've already alluded to this, but Annie and Stella are really badly written. So Stella spends most of the film just crying. And I get that one of her friends has just been killed, but it's a real bore to watch. So Lucy, again, as you've mentioned as well, she's got a bit more going on because she introduces them to the Ouija board and seems to have sort of some kind of interest in the occult or demons or whatever. Like she seems to have a book or multiple books that tell her about the djinn and that. But generally, the characters aren't very compelling. Many of them were a little bit irritating. And then just kind of bouncing off that, then some of the script is a bit weak and isn't particularly sophisticated in how the characters would have conversations with one another. And it felt like it got a bit repetitive quite quickly. And I didn't really feel like I was seeing anything new or groundbreaking in general.
And I agree completely. And so not only are the female characters, all the characters are fairly weakly written, I'd say. But not only that is, a lot of them are they look a bit similar. So two of the girls look the same and two of the lads look the same, to the point where I was about half an hour in where I realised that Liam and the other guy who looks a bit like Liam.
Other Liam.
Yeah. So Liam, Scottish Liam, and then there's Rob, long-haired douche, and other guy, right? And then there's Stella, Annie, they look the same. And I was just like, these are all the same people. The only reason I know the guy with long hair isn't one of them is because he's got long hair. Like, so they all look a bit interchangeable. If that's a stylistic choice, then that's okay, but then you need to do more with it, because otherwise I was just sort of going, I don't know who's who.
And I didn't really like any of them, really. And I wasn't really rooting for any of them. I was like, I hope you get burnt alive, bastards.
And that comes down to the script, which is that the script. So I don't like being too overly critical or too pointed, but the script is weak in this film. The dialogue is weak. So some of the the reason I said I had a hard time with it early on is some of the early dialogue is like GCSE drama. This is the bit where there's your typical downstairs creepy neighbour old man Smithers, right? And it turns out he is Liam's dad's mate, and actually, shock horror, he wasn't creepy. He's the Home Alone guy. He's just looking out for him. Do you know what I mean?
He's trying to protect him. He's protecting him.
But there's a bit in it, isn't there, where he says to them, I need to go and look at the electrics in your flat.
Yeah.
And Stella says something like, why? And he sort of suddenly goes all creepy and goes, don't worry, I won't look at your diary.
Yeah.
Like that. And I was like, that's like you've sat at your desk and gone, I need to say something creepy there.
Yeah, we need the audience to think that he's creepy and the bad guy, even though he turns out to not be.
Have him say something weird and creepy. And then the other bit is long-haired douche man. So his whole thing is he comes in, he's the new flatmate, which has absolutely no relevance to the story whatsoever. And then
it doesn't,
and they're going out, and again he goes to Stella, which is she's already been creeped on or is about to be creeped on by old man Smithers, and he goes to something about, do you like to play about? And she goes, what do you mean? He goes, naughty pills for a naughty girl. And I was like,
yeah.
I was like,
I'm so pleased you brought that up.
Through me, Alice. It went through me, and I was like, that's okay. There's an element that time hasn't been kind to that, and some dialogue. If you look at films from around that period, British films, whatever, they are a bit like that. But I watched that and I was like, oh my God,
it's
went
bad, isn't it? Yeah.
Through me.
Naughty pills for a naughty girl. He does say that, doesn't he?
I'd be like, you're not moving in here. There's no way. There's no way. There's no way you're moving in here. So that was that. So some of the dialogue early on, but then the dialogue gets better, and I don't know if it's because you have the inciting incident and then it gets better. But I think we needed more time to warm to the characters, so we gave a shit about them. But all that you see them do is sort of be really self-indulgent, obnoxious, entitled pricks, do a Ouija board, then get killed off. Whereas if you saw them being a bit more likeable, and it wouldn't take much, then doing the Ouija board, it might be you might be a bit more attached to them, but you're not. So it's just a bit. There's definitely a massive exposition gap, and that was my main issue, which is that gap in the script and some weak dialogue, particularly in the first half of the film. It's almost like they couldn't figure out how to establish the characters, and that then led to sort of issues later on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. It was all about, we just need them to do the Ouija board and then they need to be killed off. And it was like, that was such, that was so much of the focus that the things happening around it weren't really thought about. Like, they're not fully developed characters. I don't feel like there's no backstory to them. There isn't anything about them really that makes them three-dimensional. Like the kind of putting Lucy on a boat sort of thing. It's kind of, oh, look how quirky she is. She lives on a boat. And it's like, but it's never explained how she's on a boat and she's in college. Like, is she 16 and own a boat? I don't know.
But yeah, if they'd have just, this is what I mean, there's definitely a decent film in there. But you just need a bit more in terms of the script, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So we'll move on to talking about the critical reception then in a moment, because I believe, Alice, it's the return of The Rabbit Hole.
OMG, here it is, guys. The first one of 2023.
Bloody hell, aren't you lucky?
We are going to go down the rabbit hole for this segment that I'm going to call Alice Down the Rabbit Hole.
I can't wait to see what you found on this.
For this journey down the rabbit hole, let's start with the director and writer of the film, Marcus Adams. Marcus was born in Swindon in England in 1966, and he caught my attention when I discovered that before embarking into the world of cinema, he directed quite a few music videos, including the video for E17's Christmas banger, Stay Another Day. His passion for music videos possibly spawned from the fact that he used to have very close professional involvement with a band, and apparently spent some time as a dancer and choreographer. The band, Meat Beat Manifesto, was established in the mid to late 80s and has been described as techno-industrial. Adams' main contribution was choreographing their live shows, and he started directing their music videos. It is believed that Meat Beat Manifesto, sometimes known as MBM, influenced acts such as the Chemical Brothers, Nine Inch Nails, and one of my favourites, The Prodigy. Some of their earlier work is even thought to have influenced entire genres. As for what's next for Marcus, well, a film he directed called Deep Fear is currently in post-production and is an action thriller about a round-the-world yachtswoman who is forced off her plotted course when a big old storm rolls in. And guess who the cinematographer is, Josh? It's only Mark Silk, who was a camera operator on Stardust, and you won't believe who the visual effects supervisor is for Deep Fear. Well, it's only David Fowler, who was the stereo producer for In the Heart of the Sea. So Marcus, Mark and David, thank you for all your tremendous work. And that was Alice Down the Rabbit Hole.
I couldn't even find this film, so I don't know how you found all that. So well done.
Oh, I have my ways. I have my ways.
Anyway, so let's move on to talking about the critical reception then. Now, I've done my best to not see the critical reception, although I can probably guess it didn't do amazingly well.
What makes you say that, Josh?
Because you picked it.
Because I picked it for an underrated
I
film
think it's
podcast.
probably quite low, but I would generously say that I would give it a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
But I'd say it's probably lower than that, and maybe we're looking at a 4 or even a 3 out of 10, or 30-40% roughly. What about you? Well, you know, so why am I asking that?
well, but I would probably be sort of similar to where you are, 5, maybe dip into the high 4s, I think.
Yeah.
But here is the reason why I chose Long Time Dead. Okay. So at the time of recording, over on IMDb, it gets 4.7 out of 10. And then over on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience give it 37%, and then the critics give it 22%. And it only has 9 reviews from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes, which, again, kind of suggests I do think it's a bit underseen. And I could find that it made over $22 million. I can only find it in dollars, sort of worldwide box office wise, but I could not find anywhere what the budget was.
It can't have been a massive budget.
Can't have been much. I can't imagine it was up to 22 million. So I wonder if it made back its budget. I don't know what the freaking budget was.
So that's not bad in terms of box office, but is anyone going back and watching this now? Do you know what I mean? It's so hard to find.
Well, not now. No, it's not. Unless you've got a DVD player, which I don't have, and I don't think most people do.
So that averages out then, if you work out those 3 scores, at just over 35%. So I'd say that's underrated. Look, it's not.
Okay, yeah.
It's a flawed film. I feel like they wanted it to be like a Trainspotting type film, mixed with a bit of Final Destination, where I can almost see that in another world, if this is done better, you know, the careers of the actors go and they become massive stars. But No offense to them or anything like that, but obviously that didn't happen, as far as I know. And it's it's not 35% bad. It's not much better than that, but for me, I'm going to say underrated.
Okay, and I do agree. Like, thinking back to some of the things that were in our sort of like section, the way it looked and the way that it's been designed, it is quite good, and I think it does have the desired impact. It's just a lot of that development of the characters and the script and the story, a lot of that was lacking, which is why I wouldn't probably give it anything higher than a 5. But yeah, I think a bit mean, and I think the critics were pretty mean as well. And I would also say I do think it's underseen as well.
So we're saying underrated, underseen then?
There we go, double whammy. She's done it again. I'm winning this podcast, y'all. So there we go then, another one in the underrated and underseen pile. I'm pretty happy about that. Pretty happy with what Josh had to say about Long Time Dead. You didn't tear it apart. And that's always a nice surprise.
I'm a better person than you, and I always find better things to say.
Well, yeah, and no one's arguing with you about that.
And Ace Ventura's decent. Anyway,
no comment. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Right, so what is going on next week, Josh?
So, next week, as I'm sure you'll be aware, write in your diary, as it always is every year, it's Valentine's Day, Alice.
Yay.
So we put it out to the listeners what they thought the most romantic film was that we should do. We got loads and loads of great suggestions, and I'd love to do all of them. But we went through, and between us, we picked one that we thought would make a good episode. We have picked one suggested by @Green Elf Green Elf Oz, or Green Elf Oz. I think that's right. They have suggested that we pick You've Got Mail. So we're going to be talking about that next week and discussing why we chose it between us to talk about. So yes, join us next week where we'll be talking about You've Got Mail for our Valentine's Day special. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, the email address is filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. If you just search for Just Films and That on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, we're on all of them. Give us a follow. We're always trying to put stuff out there. And thank you as ever for listening. I'll tell you what as well, we're also on the television, aren't we, Alice?
We are indeed. Every Friday from 6 p.m, you can find me and Josh talking about all our favourite underrated and underseen films on the local TV network. So if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, Liverpool, or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. That is every Friday from 6 p.m.
Yes, there we go. Lots of ways to see us, hear us, get in touch with us. And, of course, thank you, as ever, for all your support. We'll see you next week when it's going to get romantic as we talk about You've Got Mail. Thanks for listening. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio!
Bye!